Welcome to Divvy Dreams, a channel dedicated to high-yield ETF investing. This is my weekly estimate video for the 23 Roundhill ETFs that declare this Friday. Before we jump into that, let's take a minute to talk about return of capital. I believe this is the value prop of these funds and why they have blown up to such huge numbers. I want to break down how return of capital works for Roundhill and why a lower cost basis for these ETFs are a double-edged sword. Let's start with the launch price of WHO. So in this example, that's $50.66. Each week, a dividend amount is declared on Friday. That payment made to you is recorded as return of capital for tax purposes by Roundhill. That means your initial investment in this example, $50.66, we minus the payment that you get on Tuesday, and we're left with $49.91. In this example, you might get 2 to 3 years worth of return before having to pay taxes. With prices being so low and payments being so low, you might actually get 5 to 7 years worth of payments before you have to pay tax if the payments stayed at the current levels. They might for the next few weeks. But as you can see in this example, which is reflective of the current prices today, $25.45 minus a 19-cent dividend payment will dramatically increase the amount of weeks in which you'll get your full return. When they go back to the prices that we were seeing 6 months ago, you'll get less time to enjoy them tax-free. Herein lies the double-edged sword. The larger the price you pay, the longer you get. Okay, so looking at the total for the last 4 weeks, we're sitting here at 69 cents. The current price, as you can see, is around $38, which for the most part is the average of this ETF, but it's down just a little over $11 from the launch price. At the current payment rate, we're looking at around 230 weeks tax-free earnings. So moving over to the return on capital, as you can see here in column O, we have $37.54 that's left to repay in full since the initiation of the fund, which launched at $50.21. And then moving over to distros under column N, we have $12.67 that has been paid in total since the initiation of the fund, which started under the date here of February 19th, 2025. The gain is my formula on trying to estimate or help estimate the price. But as you can see, the way that I have it set up at least is that it looks at both last Friday and then this Friday, and then makes a calculation as to how much money Roundhill may have made. So in this case, it's, minus 93, which could ultimately impact the price that they actually declare tomorrow, which may be different from what I have. If you look at the IV, Apple typically is pretty low here. It doesn't change very often. The guesstimate yield that I have is 22.24%. Again, low, but that's just what they're paying at right now. So, and then finally, if we move over to the total, we can see the total amount that this fund has paid over the last 4 weeks, which at 70 cents or nearly 70 cents is really great. I mean, this is probably, and I said it last week, the highest Apple ETF in existence in terms of how much it pays. And I think that's what makes this fund, especially some others, so attractive. So let's take a look at what my estimate is for this week. Okay, so let me get this. And so you can see, 17 cents, which in relative terms, it's pretty much in line with where Apple typically pays. Obviously, last week was a lot higher than 17 cents, nearly a 10 cents delta. But, with the current market conditions, I think they're probably going to pay lower here. And again, I could be wrong, and my formula could be way off, and they end up paying more. The fund managers basically have a floor and have a ceiling on how much they're willing to pay on this fund. And they usually make that determination if they didn't make any money on the swap transactions. So this week they didn't. So this could be higher, but based on my best guess, we're around 17 cents. All right, so looking at the last 4 weeks total for AMD, we're sitting at $2.57. And this is by far probably one of the highest paying ETFs that Roundhill has. The current price is sitting around $44.70, which is only around a $6 loss from the initial offering price. Now this stock, or ETF in this case, has been much higher recently, so it is down quite a bit as compared to maybe a month ago. The current repayment rate that we're looking at here is pretty low, 88 weeks, which is a far cry from Apple's example. And our return on capital for this particular instance is $29.71. That's left to make a full payment. And then if we're moving over to distros, we have $20.99, which is nearly $21 clearly, of total distributions paid since the initiation date. Moving over to gain, similar to Apple, not a lot of gain here. Again, that's going to be reflective of the price, and it may determine the actual price, as I stated before. IV, on the other hand, for AMD is quite a bit higher. There's a lot of trading on the AMD stock. I know a lot of YouTubers like to talk about that one, so that may be you, that may be others, but yeah. So the guesstimate yield I have for AMD this week is 58%. And so we'll take a look now at what I have for this. Okay, and as you can see, I have 51 cents, which is kind of on par really for this fund. Again, since Roundhill in this case, didn't make any money on the swap, there's a chance that they're pay somewhere between their floor and their ceiling. I don't actually know what that is, but if my educated guess is right, we'll be around 51 cents. Okay, awesome. So let's take a look at ARM. How have they been doing this week? Well, we'll know that in a minute, but let's take a look at the total distributions they have done over the past 4 weeks, which is at $1.21. It's middle of the road, but that's pretty good. The current price is $30.44, which is down $20 from the launch price of $51. So looking at the total distributions over a week period of time, this is at 61 weeks, which is lower than the other two. Total return on capital is $45.54, which is how much is left. And then looking at the distributions thus far, it's $6.01. And that's because this fund is fairly new. Moving over to the gains, we actually see a gain here, which means they made money on this fund from week to week. The IV is higher, or at least middle of the road, at 51. And then the guesstimate here, what I have at least, is about an 84% yield. So let's take a look at where we're at. And yep, 50 cents. Well, that is kind of high. And that tells me that maybe my guess is a little too high. I'm saying that because on average, we're looking at maybe around like 34 cents or something. So I don't think I'll edit it. I think I'm just going to go with this because, I need to adjust things and learn. So if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I got it at 50 cents. Yeah, so if you didn't know, that's the current CEO of Amazon. All right, so let's take a look at how Amazon has performed over the last 4 weeks. So we're sitting at 85 cents. Not super high, kind of maybe middle of the road. I mean, with today's prices, it's kind of, I think, in that general vicinity. Currently, their stock price is sitting at $33.85, which is down $15 from the original price of the $41. It looks like it's going to take us around 119 weeks to make our money back on this stock had you bought in right at that $49. Total distributions on this fund are currently sitting around $12.44, which, isn't bad. It's going to take, as we know, that 113 weeks to get all that money back. But yeah. Okay, so bad news, gain on this one, down, right? There's no money made effectively on this stock, which means it's going to be that kind of floor to ceiling kind of discussion. And so my actual prediction may be wrong here. But again, this is based off my best guess. So the IV on Amazon's fund is actually kind of low. It's $32. I think their stock price is trading around, like, if I'm not mistaken, like $230 or something like that. And then, the guesstimate yield in this case is around $43. Sorry, 43%. And so let's just look at what I've got for this week for Amazon. Okay, looks like we're at 28 cents, which is kind of on par with where they have been recently. So I don't think it's too far off. And again, depending on how Roundhill's fund managers feel about this particular stock and its current price point, they may change that. But I believe it's going to be around that. All right, it's time to look at AVGW or Broadcom. Yeah, I don't know. Someone explain that ticker to me. How do those two things make sense? So let's take a look at the total they've earned in the last 4 weeks, which is $1.60. And I think that's getting into the higher tiers of the payment structures, as we're seeing across the board on these funds. So we look at the current price point, it's selling at $42.99, which is about a $9 delta from its debut price. Looking at the total distributions that we have left in order to earn our total back from the original price, we're sitting right around at 79 weeks. And if we look at the return on capital, which means we have $34 yet to reclaim, and the total distributions on this fund are sitting at $17.46. All right, so looking at the gain, well, good news. They actually made some money on the swap fund, which is great, which means my formula actually might be correct. If we look at the 30-day IV on Broadcom's funds, it's actually pretty high. I think they're getting a lot of traction on that IV, which is good for the overall funds. Moving over to the guesstimate yield in this case, I have it at 65%. So why don't we take a look at what I've got for the estimate this week? All right, let's just move this. Oh, here we are at 54 cents. Well, yeah, I mean, it's a little bit higher maybe than the last couple of weeks combined, but overall, I think it's kind of in line. Again, we're in a weird market right now. What some of these funds are doing awesome, some of them are doing really poorly. In this case, with AVGO or Broadcom, they're kind of middle of the road. $42 is not a bad price for the current ETF. All right, so let's take a look at BABW or Alibaba. I get why they dropped the A and went with the B, but Anyway, so let's go ahead and take a look at their 4-week total. As of this week, it looks like we're at $1.68, which isn't bad. Again, that's kind of in the middle road to higher tier. Currently, their ETF's trading for around $42.11, which is down around $9. I mean, that's not bad considering how a lot of these other funds are sitting. So the total number of weeks we got on this particular fund right here is 96 weeks, which is kind of towards the higher end, but also means that the total return on capital is also high. So the number of actual payments until you get the full repayment. Again, this fund hasn't been around that long, which is why these things are a little bit higher. We have a $6.50 of total distributions paid thus far. Moving over to gain, kind of in the negative territory here, which is too bad at around $2, which means, again, Roundhill wasn't able to make any money off of the week-to-week funds. But though it looks like the 30-day IV for Alibaba is around 46%, which isn't too bad, kind of high. And my guesstimate yield in this case is around 54%, right around. And I think next we just need to really take a look at where I am with the gap. All right. So just remove that, and yeah, it looks like we're around 44 cents, which, yeah, for this fund is pretty much on par with a lot of the other payments. All right, so Berkshire Hathaway. Now, I know this fund is not paying particularly high, but it's a very stable fund. So let's take a look at what they've been paying here for the last 4 weeks. 53 cents. Again, not super high, and certainly one of the lower paying funds. But moving over to their current price, it's sitting around $43, which is around, a $7 delta in terms of the launch price goes. And moving over to total number of weeks it's going to take to get the full reimbursement payment from the original price, we're sitting at a whopping 1,500 weeks. So, yeah, that's going to take some time. And looking at the return of capital, currently we're sitting at $42.96 to be left to be paid back that original $50, which also means that we have a $7.31 distribution so far. All right, so moving over to the gain, looks like we've actually made some money here at a little over 9, or rather a little under 8%, which means that we're probably online or in par with where the payment will be. Looking at the 30-day IV, it's not too surprising, honestly, that it's around 17%. As far as that goes, these funds, the base price I think is around $500. That's not cheap to trade. And then if you look at the guesstimate for this week, I have 3%, which is quite low. So we'll just uncover this and take a look at what we've got, and it looks like 3 cents. 3 cents. Now that's significantly lower than the previous weeks. And again, the market really plays a big role in how much these pay. And so, this could be wrong, but I'm going to stick with the 3 for this week. All right, so let's take a look at Coinbase. Where are we? So it looks here like 67 cents for the last 4 weeks isn't too bad. I mean, given where the fund is, Coinbase itself, it is not doing well as a stock, and it's lost a lot of value over the past year. I know because I own this particular fund. Currently trading at $10.51, which is down nearly, $40 nearly. So that's fun. So moving over to the launch price, which $50.27. Then moving over to the total number of weeks we have left to be paid back in full is 14 weeks. But that's really based off of when this fund was launched, which again was in February of 2025. So it's been here. This is one of the core funds that was launched ultimately. Total return on capital that we have left is $25. Again, that's reflective of the total distributions, right, which is $25. Unsurprisingly, the gain in this case is minus 16%. So, I think that just shows you week to week how much money Roundhill is actually making off this fund, which is almost nothing. And while I don't have a historical piece to this, I can imagine that it's probably the same looking at the history of this. So 30-day IV for Coinbase is 32%. And then the guesstimate yield I have here is 354%, which is unrealistically high. And I think this may be an instance where my particular formula has really failed. I don't actually understand how, but we're going to unveil this price here because I saw this earlier. And yeah, it's 72 cents, which it's not going to happen, right? I mean, that's not going to happen. So I'll probably just adjust this and lower that price to be something more realistically in line here. And I would imagine this is going to pay somewhere between 10 and 15 cents, not the 72. Yeah, there's just no way. It's a $10 fund. It's not going to happen. All right, so let's move on to Costco. Where are we sitting? All right, 4 weeks of total payments. Looks like we're around 81 cents. That's not bad. Current price, especially given the price, $49, which is like not even $1 off of what it debuted at, which is great. So that means that we're going to have a few weeks left for total repayment, which is sitting around 642, and we're looking at a current return on capital price here of $46. And again, that's really reflective of just how long this fund has actually been around, which isn't that long, maybe 3 months, which also means that the distribution is at $3.44. Okay, so looking at the gain in this case, which is good, that means the stock's going up and they're actually making money. Chances are that are in the ballpark around the actual price estimate for this week. Based on that, yield, I have 8.2%. Obviously, the IV is quite a bit lower, but we'll take a look here in a second and see just how we're sitting with Costco. All right, so let's take a look here, and 8 cents. Wow, that is a little bit lower than it has been recently, but you know what? It's not bad. I think I'm going to stick with that price this week. All right, so let's check out how gold did this week. So we're sitting at $1.33 over the last 4 payments, which is, again, it's not the greatest. It's kind of mid-range. Looking at the price, these are one of the few funds that is actually above the current price point. This one's sitting just around $10 more than what the original fund came out with, which was around $50. So moving over to the return of capital, we can see that we got 95 weeks left to make a full repayment, and that also means that the total paid in this case is $46. Therefore, the distributions are lower at 4. Looking at gain, well, in this case, this fund is actually doing really well because, inflation and the economy holistically is not doing great. So that means gold is actually on the rise, and therefore the price reflects that. So we actually get a 10% gain. Looks like the volatility on gold itself is around 63%, which is a little surprising to me. I figured it'd be a lot higher than that. So my guesstimate yield in this case is 55%. So let's go ahead and take a look at what I have for the estimate this week. Nice. Okay, 63 cents. I think that's actually in line or on par with where we should be. If we looked at last week, right, 26 cents, not great, but they've made gains and they're actually making money on this fund. So I think that would explain why we're going to get a higher payment this week. All right, this is probably the one I've been looking forward to the most today, gold miners. And why am I looking forward to this particular stock? Well, this has been the workhorse. This is the thing that's been paying the most out of all the stocks thus far. Now it's on line or on par in some cases with Google, but holistically it's just paid more. So if we look at the actual return over the past 4 weeks, it's $2.56, which, and that reflects by the price. So currently, this thing is sitting around $63.48 or thereabout, which is like $13 more than what it debuted at $50. And as we can see here, we have 137 weeks left for full repayment. Looking at the distributions, we'll start there. $8.43, whereas the return on capital is just the opposite of that. So we're looking around $41.71 there. Now, looking at the gains this week isn't great. In fact, it's negative, which means that this fund may not actually pay what I'm predicting. Looks like the IV is around 47%, which, not high, kind of middle of the road. My estimate yield on this case is going to be 38%, and that's for a estimate of, looks like I have 46 cents here, which is low, not as high as I'm hoping, to be honest. Hopefully it is more than that. I hope I'm wrong on this and it's closer to $1, because that's always great. But I guess we'll have to wait and see till tomorrow morning. All right, so let's turn our attention to Google. How are they been doing? Well, the last 4 weeks, we're at $1.75, which, as I mentioned earlier, it's not as high as gold miners, but it's still pretty good. Their price has been fluctuating a lot. I know that they've been above 70 recently, but looking at today's average, we're somewhere around $66, which is still good. They debuted at $52, which is $14 more than the current debut price, which is awesome. If you happen to get in on this stock, I remember this thing was trading around $50 like 2.5 months, maybe 3 months ago. Never even thought of doing it, but man, hindsight's always 20/20, right? So we have looks like 394 weeks in order to get a full repayment from this fund. Looks like the return on capital in this case is $34, and we're sitting at a $17 distribution. So sadly, it looks like they didn't make any money on the stock, which is too bad. So the estimate may be off. Looks like the volatility on Google stock is around 30%. The guesstimate yield in this case is 13%. And if we take a look here and what we got, so it looks like I've got 17 cents here, which is pretty low. It's certainly not as high as it has been recently. These negative numbers on these funds, I think my formula is a little weird, not always correct. I think it's something I have to go back on the drawing board here on. I hope for those of you who are invested in this fund, it's more than 17 cents. So we'll find out tomorrow. All right, here we are, Robinhood. Who? I got to tell you, this is like the workhorse ETF in these Roundhill funds. For the longest time, this thing was paying, and I think it still pays, even as much as Robinhood is down. So just looking at the last 4 weeks for this particular ETF, we're $1.65, which is significantly down from 6 months ago, where we're earning nearly $6 a month. It's just incredible how much this is down. But with that being said, the stock price is also down. At the time of this recording, we're looking at $25. I mean, that right there is shocking. That's down $25 from its original price. And, I've used this example many times, but this price was sitting at $85 around 6 months ago. Like $85. And that's why we're getting paid so much on that. But looking here at the total return in terms of how many weeks we'll need to get back to the baseline is 39 weeks. And I think this is one of the lowest stocks on that run, simply due to the fact how much it's paid. Return of capital, $15.54, which, again, is due to how much it's actually paid, which is $35.12, which was one of the highest paying funds. Looking at the gain, however, this week is low, of course, because, the stock has really fallen off a cliff. So we're at a negative 18%. The trading 30-day IV on this is pretty high, around 66%. My guess yield is 135%, and that actually might hit, but we'll see. So let's take a look at my prediction for Robinhood this week, and we're at 64 cents. So again, that's a little bit higher than we have been. I don't actually know if that's true. I hope it's true because I own the stock. So yeah, of course I wanted to pay as much as possible, but I guess we'll have to wait till tomorrow to see. All right. Thanks, Mark. Okay. So Meta, how's Meta doing right now? Well, in the last 4 weeks, it's been near $1 payout. Not too bad. If we move over to the current price, it's around $33. We're down around $16 total, or nearly $17 from 50.36. All right, so just looking over here to the left a little bit, if we go over to how many weeks we got left until we get paid back in full, 188. And then the return on capital is at $37. And our total distributions up until this point are coming in around $12.50. All right, so looking over here at our gain, yep, negative numbers again. Too bad, 7%. The IV for Facebook stock, or rather Meta's, is at around 32%. And as you can tell here, my guesstimate total is 28%. All right, so let's take a look at the guess. Okay, and it looks like we have 18 cents. It's not too bad. I mean, it's kind of right in line. It's a little bit low, but with the market being down. All right, so we're at Microsoft now. So let's take a look at how they did last week, which is not too bad, to be honest. They're at 53 cents gain over the past 4 weeks. Not too bad. So moving over to the price, currently it's priced at $30.52. It's down nearly $20. It looks like it's going to take us around 50 weeks to get our full investment back, over 148 weeks. So our current return on capital on this one is $39.41. And then we're looking at a $11 total return for Microsoft. Going over to the gain, again, down. Not too surprising. The market's been down a lot recently. Microsoft has a lower 30-day IV, which is not too surprising, I suppose. I mean, the stock's trading somewhere between 450 and 525. It seems like it keeps bouncing between that stuff. And then my guesstimate yield here is at 35%. So let's take a look real quick at what do I have for Microsoft. Well, it looks like it's 21 cents. I mean, that's not bad. It's definitely higher than it has been. I think it's a good average, and I hope that it can actually hit that. All right, MicroStrategy time, or strategy. So how are they looking this week? Just kind of looking over here. So we got 64-cent payout over the last month. I mean, truthfully, I feel like that's a little high, especially given how strategy or MicroStrategy, whatever you want to call them, has really fallen off a cliff. I mean, really, their stock hasn't been doing that great, regardless of how Bitcoin's doing. I mean, it did go up while Bitcoin was at its all-time high, clearly, but, Bitcoin is on a slide, and I feel like this stock is just, this is the lowest fund that Roundhill has. The fact that it's been kind of hovering around the $7 mark for a while is pretty shocking. I mean, right now, at least at the time of the recording of this video, it's priced at $6.90. We're talking a $43 drop from its introduction price, which is just nuts. Now, it is one of the first stocks that Roundhill introduced, and so the remaining payments that we need for this particular fund is around 8 weeks. So the return on capital on this one is around $39. It needed that we need to get out of it. We've been paid 11.32, and again, the gain here is down. I mean, not too surprising, right? The stock is not doing well. Okay, so the 30-day IV looks like it's around 86%. People are obviously trading the stock. It could be maybe everyone's selling, which is why the volatility is so high. Half kidding, of course. Now, my guesstimate yield. Yeah, so my guesstimate yield seems to be a little off here. It's racking in at over 642%. Yeah, I got to think that somehow I made an error in the calculation for this one. But we can take a look at the estimate, which I feel like is going to be way off. And yep, okay, so 84 cents. Obviously, it's not going to pay that. There's no way. We have a $6.90 ETF. At best, this thing's going to pay, closer to 8, maybe 9 cents at max. If you guys remember, or if you've ever invested into YieldMax, utility was priced around that point, and it never paid more than 10 cents at that price point. So there's just no way that this would pay that high. All right, next on the docket, what do we got here? Netflix. So how did they do in the past 4 weeks? Well, they're at 57 cents. So that's definitely, I guess you could say, middle of the road or even lower. Their current price is $20. So it looks like it's going to take around 57 weeks to get that total return back. And current return on capital looks like we're at $38. It's paid $11.64. And this is one of the few stocks where we actually have a gain. It's not much, but it's there. IV looks like 36%, which is a little shocking. I'm not super familiar with the stock, so it seems low. So I have a 91% guesstimate yield. So let's take a look at what I have for Netflix. Looks like 35 cents. It's about a little bit better than usual, especially recently. And so we'll see if that actually pays out. All right, next we got NVIDIA. So how did NVIDIA do this past 4 weeks? It looks like we're at $1.40, which is one of the better paying funds right now. Their current price is at $39.52, which is pretty good. They're only down around $10 from their debut of $50. Looks like we got 92 weeks left to get the full fund back. Currently, the return on capital is almost split with that of the distributions, but we're at $26 for that and at $22 for the distributions. So again, sadly, it looks like the stock is having some struggles week to week, and there was no money made. The 30-day IV is around 50%. My estimate was closer to 60, and let's take a look here. What did I give NVIDIA? 43 cents. So that is actually pretty close to usual. I think I'm good with that. So I'm willing to stay there. All right, Palantir time. So looks like we're at 92 cents over the last 4 weeks of total compensation, which is not too bad. Currently, their stock is getting hammered, like many others, but especially them. They're not getting really good press right now. And I think analysts are starting to downrate their stock. I think it's been a little overvalued, and therefore, of course, this stock, based on that stock, is actually going to go down with it. Currently, they're down $31 based on the $55 price that it debuted at. We got 46 weeks on the amount of payments we've got left in order to earn back that $55. And this stock has performed pretty well. I mean, close to the same performance as Hui. It's paid nearly half of its income back to us. We have $26 left, and that means we got $28 of total compensation. But like all the other funds, it's not doing well, and so we got a negative gain. The Palantir stock itself has a 50%, a little over a 50% 30-day IV, and similar to some other stocks that are seemingly a little off in terms of estimates go, the guesstimate based on my formula has at 113%. I'm just going to say there's no way it's going to pay that, but let's take a look and see what the actual number is. So, as you can see, it's 51 cents. Now, is it in the realm of possibility it could pay that? Sure. But will it? I don't think it will. And, next week, hopefully I'll have this formula worked out so it does a little bit better. I can hope that this week Palantir at best might do, I'd say, maybe 30 cents. But I guess we'll see. All right, nearly there. 4 more. So next up is Tesla, rather. They're at 96 cents over the past 4 weeks, which isn't too bad. Their stock, though, is currently, or this ETF is $28, down $22. Now, personally, I've never actually been invested in this fund and Roundhill. I got burned pretty hard with Yield Max and decided never to buy a Tesla stock again. On the other side of that, this debuted at 51.41. There's currently 82 weeks left to earn back all the money invested per stock, of course. We have a return of capital of $28, and the total compensation or distributions that we received here with this Tesla stock is at 23. Like all the other funds, really, at this point, they're all down. No money's been made. Tesla's got a 41% 30-day IV, and we're at a 64% guesstimate yield. Let's take a look at this bad boy and see how much this is. So it looks like it's 35 cents. That's actually not out of the realm of possibility that they might pay that. So for those of you holding this TSLW, you might actually get paid this week. All right, so next up we have the Treasury Bond ETF here. This guy, I tell you, it doesn't pay much, and you can tell by the 36 cents that it's paid over the last 4 weeks. If you look at the stock, though, that stock is pretty steady. It's only down $1.81 from its $50 debut. Now, this hasn't been in the market that long, which is why you see this 512 weeks. It's just, it's very recent. So there's a $48 return on capital left to be paid. And again, it's only been a few weeks, and so we're only at $1.39. And based on that 36 cents, you can kind of do the math there. It doesn't pay that much. So this is one of the few stocks that has actually performed well, and Roundhill actually has made some money on. It's got a 30-day IV of 9%, and I got a guesstimate yield here of 10%. And so let's take a look at this guy. Looks like we have 9 cents. And you know what? That's on par. That is really on par for what it's most likely to pay. Uber. And it's hard to tell what that actually means looking at that acronym there, or that symbol. If we just kind of scroll over and go over to how much they've paid, they're up quite a bit. It's $1.03. And that's over the course of the 4-week period. And that's certainly much better than some of these recent ones, but it's kind of average and in line with a lot of what's happening in the market right now. All right, so taking a look at the stock price at $31.93, that's nearly $20 down from the $51 debut price. We have around 91 weeks before it pays back the initial investment. Currently, the return on capital is around $45.95. That's left to pay. The distribution on this stock is at $5.32. And it looks like the gain here is in the negative, similar to a lot of these other funds, as we've mentioned before. The 30-day IV, the 30-day IV is at 36%. I got a little twisted there, sorry. And we have 58% in guesstimate yield. So let's go ahead and unmask this guy and see where we're at with Uber. And it looks like we're at 35 cents. Now, that seems a little high, but it could be right in line with where they're at. A $31 stock price, I mean, it's feasible. It really is. And it's not like it's never paid that before. And this is United Health. And let's look at their total payment over the last 4 weeks. Looks like we're sitting at $1.19. Not bad. Again, that's kind of average. Scrolling over to look at their current stock price, it's $39.43, which is down by about $11. And then in order to get that money back that we paid, it's going to take us about 150 weeks in order to get that money. Well over a couple years, clearly. So the return on capital here, total left to pay, $47.18. And the distribution so far has been $3.47. Similar to most of these other ones, as we've mentioned, the gain is down. So the stock price, or at least what it's going to pay, is going to be kind of up in the air. But we'll see what Roundhill does. It looks like the underlying stock here has got a 31% on its 30-day IV. And I have a guess yield here of 35.16. So let's take a look at our last one. It looks like it's going to pay 26 cents. Well, not bad. It's a little bit kind of in the middle, but that's okay. I hope those of you who invested in this fund get something a little bit high. So, all right, guys, that wraps it up for this video. It took a long time to explain this, and I think future videos are going to be a lot shorter for this stuff. I got to come up with a new format because this isn't going to work every week. I think this video is going to be well over an hour long, and for those of you who actually stuck around to watch the whole thing, thank you. If you find this kind of review useful, like you like it, consider subscribing to the channel. I'm trying to build an audience, trying to build some content around financial decision making, dividend investment, all of it. Just getting started. I really appreciate your support. Thank you so much. I'll see you guys next week.